Hey, what's up to all my gospel lovers out there? Welcome to another Gospel Love podcast. I am your host, Damaris Johnson. And unfortunately, the lovely Leslie cannot be with us today. We had some things come up within our family that she just had to attend to, but the show had to get done. So she said, you go ahead and you do it without me. Tell the listeners that I missed them and I will get with them on the next podcast. But I want to just welcome you and say thank you for joining us once again to another Gospelove, what I like to call a Gospelove session, where we are helping you make your marriage magnificent. And over the last 20 years, Leslie and I have been learning how to make marriage magical. Make marriage magnificent. And so we want to help you do the same thing. We want to give you what the Lord has given us to enable us to make our marriage magnificent. And I'm talking about, I love being married. I love being in love. I love being married. I love marrying other couples. And it's just it's a wonderful thing. It's the best thing that ever happened to me. And we need to be able to believe that and associate ourselves and connect with other people who have made marriage magnificent. So we have a powerful show for you today. Today we're going to be talking about how to go from a messy marriage to a magnificent marriage. Unfortunately, over the last 15 years of, and I don't like to use the word counseling, I like to use the word coaching better than counseling, but part of coaching is counseling, and part of counseling is coaching. So it's kind of in two words that are interchangeable. But unfortunately, I've experienced a lot of mess. I've experienced some messy marriages, and to the glory of God, we've been able to take a lot of the messy situations that we've had come our way and cause them to be magnificent once again. And so, because one thing you got to realize that at one point the marriage wasn't messy, or you wouldn't have got married in the first place. So you have to get back to that place to where you were striving and you were loving and you were doing things that made you say, I want to marry this person. And that's part of the process. But marriage can get messy. It can get messy. I can recall when Leslie and I when we first got married, and we wanted to be married. We loved each other. The Lord had filled our hearts with love for each other. We wanted to share our lives together, and we wanted to go and build the life God wanted us to build. And we, you know how that is. You walk around with each other, looking in each other's eyes, smiling all the time, and gripping and holding and handling and doing those things. And man, but you know what? All that still didn't give us the know-how to stay married, the know-how to make marriage magnificent. And so through the process of trial and error and, pain and suffering, we learned how to build magnificent marriages. And I cried out to God. I said, Lord, you told me to get married. You told me to marry Leslie. Now teach me how to be married. Teach me how to be a husband. Show me what it means to love. And slowly but surely, the Lord began to, dissect who I was and tear me down and build me back up and show me how to love Leslie. And he gave me some very practical things to do, gave me some very wise things to do. And I became skillful at being a husband. I became skillful at loving Leslie. And so she then followed my lead in it. And, she began to cry out to God, and we began to do things together because we wanted our marriage to be magnificent. I grew up in a household where my mother and father's marriage was dysfunctional. Leslie grew up in a household where it was more the same, some of the same things, dysfunction, primarily because Jesus wasn't Lord in the household, over the marriage. Jesus wasn't in my parents' marriage, and Jesus wasn't Lord over Leslie's parents' marriage. So, when Jesus isn't Lord, there's going to be confusion and chaos. And there was confusion and chaos and dysfunction. And we couldn't take what we had learned in our marriage. And we couldn't take what we had learned from our parents or saw happen in our parents' relationship and apply it to our relationship, which is actually what you do by default. It's what you do by default. If you want to see how a wife will function within a marriage, look at her mother. If you want to see how a husband will function within a marriage, look at his father and see how they function within their relationship, within their marriage. And that's 9 times out of 10, that's how they're going to function in their marriages. So we started doing exactly that. I started acting like my father, closed, very nonverbal in his approach to marriage. Not really communicating a lot of things and expressing himself a lot, and was a great provider. But when it came to those other things, I remember my mother and father, kissing every now and then, or showing affection every now and then, but not enough. So there are some things that we need to let go. Let me just say it like that. And I know a lot of us don't want to let go of what we learned in our parents' house and our mother's house. But you know what? If you want to have a magnificent marriage, you want to get out of that mess you in, then you're going to need to let some things go. I'm going to give you three things, what I like to call the three principles to go from a messy marriage to a magnificent marriage. And I want you to apply these three things for 21 straight days. It has been scientifically proven that if you can do a thing for 21 straight days, you'll be on your way to mastery. If you can do it for 31 days, now you pretty much got that thing mastered. So I want to encourage you for 21 days to put these three principles into place, because you will go from being a mess to magnificent if you can just follow these three simple principles that'll guide you into a marvelous marriage. This is what happened for myself and Leslie. I can recall how Leslie had a particular perspective on her role within our marriage. And it was based upon what she saw her mother do within her mother's marriage. And it was the same for me. But after realizing that, you know what, this thing ain't quite working the way we wanted to go. It ain't right, quite doing the things we wanted to do. We decided, this ain't right. Look, this thing is getting messy. A lot of going back and forth. A lot of well, I say this and I think this, and you know what? The goal of marriage is oneness. And ultimately, we got to get to a place where we're moving in the same direction to come to that common ground, and where we can submit ourselves one to each other, one to another, and be able to decree and declare what it is. And so after crying out to God, he gave us some practical things to do. And I want to give you those very same things. First and foremost, you gotta be committed to making it work. Leslie and I, we said, you know what, if we're going to get married, then we're going to be married. We're going to live married. Too often, a lot of us get married, but then we don't want to live married. You have to have a mind or mentality. I'm gonna do this. I'm in this for real. I'm gonna do this thing for real. If I'm gonna get married, I'm gonna be married. I never could understand why people would get married but then want to live like they're single. What I mean by that is you're married, but you still want to, travel the world with your girlfriends, or guys, you want to go hang out at the place with your fellas, and you want to go, run around and do the things that you did as if you were single. I mean, I hate to, you hate to give a list of things because people do different things, but the thought that summarizes it, you can't do the things you used to do when you were single once you get married. Everything has to be ran through the filter of the marriage and of that relationship, because that's first, that's primary. But a lot of times people get married and want to live like they're single. It just didn't make sense to me. It don't make sense to me. So I want to encourage you, man, if you married, man, just live married. I mean, even if you're committed, I'm about marriage. I'm about doing it for real. I'm about doing it right. But if you're in a covenant relationship that's based on your love for each other, but you haven't yet gotten married, still, see, the thought is before you get married, you should actually be living like you are married. Not that you're either, you're single or you classified as, engaged or boyfriend, girlfriend. If you want to eventually see yourself with that person, then you got to start living with it like that even before you actually make it official. In some sense. Now let's get that right. Now there's certain things you should not be doing prior to getting married, but that's a whole nother podcast. So what I want to start with is these three principles that'll take your situation, no matter what it is, the mess we termed it, and make it magnificent. I also want to say this: thank God, and I think I said this in one of the promos. Thank God that there's a solution. God has a solution for your mess. There is not a mess within anybody's marriage that is beyond the solving ability of God. There is not a mess within anybody's marriage, no matter what you've gone through, that will enable you to not receive the solution for your marriage. What I'm about to share with you is a 3-principle solution that'll cover any aspect or any situation that you can possibly be facing, because the principles are eternal, they're everlasting, they are applicable to love, life, and liberty in marriages. So I want you to understand this and grab this, because this is marriage saving material. What I'm saying, I've seen it work. I've experienced it in our own marriage. I've given these same principles to countless couples and marriages. And after a short period of time, 21 days, 31 days, 2 months, it's like, wow. I wish I had known these things, several years ago, so we wouldn't have had to go through this mess. So the first thing that I want you to realize is these principles work if you work them. If you don't work them, I wish the lovely was here so she could share some of her testimonies of some of the things we had to go through. A lot of times I don't recall the details, but there's just some things that we went through. One of the things that we were challenged with was, Sister Leslie grew up in a household where Mama ran everything. Daddy had gotten in a situation where he couldn't quite be as active and do the things that that he would normally do. So Mama had to take over everything. She had to take over everything. She had to do everything. And so quite naturally, when Leslie get married, she feel like she has to do everything. She got to dictate, and she got to determine what gets done, how it gets done, when it gets done, who does it. And it just got to the point where I said, hold up, babe, hold up now. I know you, and I know you're doing it out of love, and I know, but you don't have to do and be determine everything and how everything go, and you don't have to do that. You don't have to do that, and I, not to get into the particulars, but it eventually got to the point where I said, just I got this. I can do that without counsel. I can do that without you determining how I do it and when I do it. Okay, so and we talked it out, and we talked it out in love, and at times it may have gotten to the point to where we had to really hey, this is what it is, and this is how we want to do it, but it was all in love. It's all in love, because we had this one thing in agreement that we were in agreement about, is that we were going to live married. We were going to get this thing right. And so after dealing with those matters, and God giving us a methodology and a process and practical things to put in place, man, this thing done got magic. It got magnificent. This thing got magnificent. And it gets more and more magnificent as you put these principles in place, so let me get to those things. The first thing that I want to share with you, of the 3 principles. The first one we find in we get our foundation, I'll say like that, from 1 Corinthians, the 13th chapter, which is going to become a pivotal chapter for this particular message. I want to really read the last verse, which deals with the conclusion of this powerful chapter that most refer to as the love chapter. The conclusion of this particular chapter is, and now abideth faith, hope, charity, which is the Old English word for love. These 3, but the greatest of these is love, is charity. When you think abideth, think permanent, think fixture, think pillar. I almost entitled this the 3 pillars for coming out of a mess to making your marriage magnificent. But I chose the word principle, because when you think principle, you think that which governs a certain a certain concept or that which governs a certain law. There's certain principles that govern. They're designed to govern. Laws were designed to govern a particular action or activity. Laws are designed to govern automatically without any human effort, in a sense. The gravity is designed for a particular reason. It's designed to maintain man's position in the earth, fixed position in the earth. We don't have to do anything for the law of gravity to work. Well, these principles operate in a similar fashion. When we appropriate and enter into the spirit of these principles, they happen, I don't want to say automatically, but they happen naturally. It's a better word. They happen naturally. So these three things: faith, hope, and love. But now if you notice, we reading it from the outside in because love is the greatest. So we want to start with that which is the greatest. The greatest of these is love. Now, when we think love, a lot of times we think of it in a conceptual manner. Everybody has their own, ideal of what love is. Well, we want to give you a very practical approach and take a very practical approach to love, and not think of it from a conceptual perspective, but think of it as something to do or some things to be done, and not something that is abstract, but something that is concrete and very practical. So the first thing we got to understand is that love is a fruit. In Galatians, the 5th chapter, the Bible lets us know that the fruit of the Spirit is love. The fruit of the Spirit is love. Love is a fruit. Because love is a fruit, it has the ability to grow. Just like any fruit in the natural starts off in seed form and then grows up into that perfected state, love operates in the same manner. Love grows to be what it's supposed to be if we get out of the way, if we don't hinder it. Just like if I go outside and I plant a apple seed in the ground and I leave it in the ground and I water it, and I don't go out there and dig it up and dig around it and play with it to make sure it's still in the ground, and I don't go and stand over top of the leaves, and I don't prevent it from sprouting about, then it'll grow and be what it's supposed to be. Love is the same way if we get out of the way. Love is a fruit that has the ability to grow as long as we stay connected to the source of love. This is a very important matter. The source of love is not your spouse. Yep. Let that thing sink in. The source of love is not your, well, I know that, Brother D. I know that, Damaris. We know that ain't the source of, well, guess what? You don't act like it. I sit down with a lot of folk. And they say, well, and they ask them, who's your source of love is? Yeah, I know who the source of love is. But then they practically go about expressing that their thought of who they think the source of love is by putting it on their spouse. Here's how. Because a lot of couples want to dictate or determine how much they love a particular person by what they do for them. Every situation where somebody said, I just don't love them the way I used to. Well, why? Because he don't do this, or because she don't do that, and she stopped doing, there you go. So once you determine or dictate your love of your spouse based on what they do, you've made them the source of love for you. And if they're going to be your source, eventually you're going to run out, because I can't do enough good to make Leslie love me like she's supposed to love me. See, that's a legalistic relationship. Most marriages are based on legalism or legalistic practices or legalistic perspectives. That's a legalistic relationship. When your love for me is determined by how good or how much good I do towards you, you've just turned me into being your God. You just made me an idol. And that's not what we're supposed to do. So you have to stay connected to the source of love. God is love, the word of God says. Every time we see the Bible talks about God is a particular thing, that's speaking of him being the source of that particular thing. As long as I stay connected to the source and I have a relationship with the source, then I'll always have a full supply. My God shall supply all your need. You need love. You need love for whatever. You need love to live life. To love is life. Life is loving. To love, as long as I stay connected to the source and not make my spouse my source. I think that's worth me saying again now. Understand. When you decide that you're going to love, or your love for your spouse either grows or reduces based upon what they do, you've made them the source of love. I'm telling you, 90%, well, I can't put a percentage on it, but a whole lot of marriages and couples we've counseled or coached have this particular perspective on how they love their spouse, and it's just not right. So the way the fruit of love grows is, one, by staying connected to the source, and the second is as it is expressed, it grows. A simple expression. I'm gonna give you a simple expression of saying, I love you. Listen. I'm gonna give you, oh my God, I'm praying you get this. You don't even have to say I love you to your spouse to make your love grow for your spouse. Get that? You don't even have to say, oh, we're Sister Leslie was here so she can break this down for us. She can help me break this down, I should say. You don't even have to say to your spouse, I love you, for your love to grow for your spouse. You can say it when they're not even around. I did it. I know. She did it. In prayer and drive time, just when you say, I love Leslie. Just say that about your spouse. Just say their name. Say, I love whatever their name is. Say, I love Lisa. I love Brian. I love Mark. I love Karen. I love, just say their name. You can say it when they're not even around. And that's going to make your love increase and abound for them. Man, now I'm telling you, this thing is real. Okay, listen, I got to move on. We're running out of time. So the first thing you got to understand is love is a fruit that grows. As long as you stay connected to the source and not make your spouse your source, and you express it privately or publicly. And when I'm thinking publicly, I'm thinking primarily with your spouse, or where your spouse can hear you. Okay. The second thing is, we got to understand that because love is a fruit, and in 1 Thessalonians, the 3rd chapter, the 12th verse, it talks about that Paul prayed for the church at Thessalonica that their love would increase and abound toward each other. That their love would increase and abound toward each other. That's important to note. That we pray, Lord, make my love to increase and abound toward Leslie. I prayed that. Pray that. And my love just started growing like in leaps and bounds. And it wasn't based on what she did. Lord, make my love to increase and abound toward Leslie. And I would say, and I take that principle, I would say it over my children, I would say it over other people in my life. Lord, make my love. See, I didn't go to Leslie to say, Lord, make my love grow based on how good Leslie do for me and what she don't do or what she don't. No, because she's not the source of love. She's the recipient of my love. She's the giver of love, but she's not the source of love. When you make her, if you ever make your spouse the source of love, you're doomed. You're doomed to fail. Now that we know what to pray specifically, Lord, make my love to increase and abound toward my spouse. Now you have to confess what you pray. And I kind of got ahead of myself because I got excited. I'm sorry. Now you have to confess what you pray. Earlier I said to you that you can say, the word confess means to say the same as. So when you say the same thing you prayed, or when you say what the word says about love, now you function in the spirit of confession. Well, the word says that love can increase and abound toward whoever you're praying for or praying toward. So after you say, Lord, make my love increase and abound for your spouse, in this case, I'll use myself as an example. Lord, make my love increase and abound for Leslie. Then I turn around and say, my love will increase and abound for Leslie. I will love Leslie like she's supposed to be loved. I will love Leslie as Christ loved the church. I do love. You got to start saying and speaking in line with what you're praying. You can't go pray, Lord, make my love increase and abound. And then when you get around the boys or you get around the girls, say, I don't know if I love him the way I used to. I don't know if my love. No, you can't talk like that. You got to confess and say what it is that's in line with what you're praying. Okay, that's another thing, another aspect of operating in this principle of love. I told you I want to give you some practical things. The next thing is read 1 Corinthians chapter 13 together. I'll never forget when the Lord showed me that. He said, start reading chapter 13 together. And Leslie and I would read it every night before we went to bed. We did it for years. I'm talking about for years. We don't do it now like we did it back then, but for years we sat in the bed. We would sit before we went to sleep. We'd read chapter 13 and give each other a kiss goodnight. I don't care what had happened during the day. I don't care what didn't happen during the day. I don't care how bad things were. We would stop and we say, we got it, because this is what we was instructed to do. And we'd sit down and we'd read 1 Corinthians, the whole chapter together. We did it before, but you can do it when you wake up. You can do it in the middle of the day. But we would go to bed reading that chapter together. And I'm telling you, Dan, man, that thing, it works. It works, okay? And then the last thing I would say this is tell each other. Make it a practice to tell each other. Remember, we're doing this for 21 days. Tell each other that you love each other, okay? The second thing is hope, okay? Now, we did faith, hope, and love. So the second aspect of hope, of this trio is hope. I know a lot of people see faith as being greater than hope, but without hope, you can't have faith. So hope is the blueprint. So what we're going to say is hope, see what you want your marriage to be. That's the first thing you got as a husband or as a wife. What you need to do, and again, I keep referring back to a situation that I've had, and there was this one experience where I sat down. Normally when I sit down with the couple, I sit down with both of them first. I really don't even like to split them up. I always like to be have the both husband and wife in the meeting at the same time. But there is some advantages and there is some wisdom in not having the husband or the wife in the room at some point. But I like to sit down with them first. Then I like to take them individually. So after having a group meeting, then we had an individual meeting. I sat down with a wife of a marriage, and I said, well, what do you see your marriage being, or what do you want your marriage to be? And you want to talk about a fairy tale? You want to talk about a fairy tale? You want to talk about something right out of a book, a movie, or something? I say, I love the fact that you got a big vision, but that's very impractical. Some of the stuff that she was saying. So a lot of our perspective of what we want marriage to be can get beyond the scope of practicality. So within the framework of practicality, what do you see your marriage being? What do you want it to be? Once you get a vision, once you see what you want your marriage to be, because remember, without a vision, people cast off restraints. Without a vision, people can't see where they're going. And if you don't see where you're going, you're subject to go any kind of way. You're subject to go anywhere and not be on the path you're supposed to be on. So the first thing we sit down, we say, okay, what do you see your marriage being as a wife? What do you see your marriage being as a husband? Once you get a vision of what you want your marriage to look like, now you got to sit down and the second thing you do is sit down and describe it to each other of what it is that you see. Right? First, you as an individual husband, you see what you want your marriage to look like. And then as a wife, you see, and then you come together and you say, this is what I see, babe. This is what I see, honey, for our marriage. And then you work out any discrepancies or any inconsistencies, and you say, okay, let's make it work. This actually just happens before you get married, but honest, what it is now. The last thing you do now under the category of hope is you write it down. And I'm going to say this, it should be write down 7 ways you want to express your love towards your spouse. 7 ways. 7 being the number of completion, and 7 being 7 days a week. So every day you be sure you express one of those ways of love toward your spouse. So write down 7 days. For 21 days, you're going to express this love. For 21 days. If you can do all 7 in one day, perfect. I'm going to say that again. If you can do all 7 in one day, and you can, perfect. But you're going to write them down. Write them down, and you're going to put them somewhere where you can see them every day. And it can be simple things where you say it, where you kiss her, where you send her a text message. Simple things. 7 ways to make your spouse feel your love. We wrote a song that called "Gonna Make You Feel My Love." Oh, I gotta let y'all hear this song, and that's another aspect of gospel love we haven't even got to yet. But we write music, we write true, real love songs, and we're gonna let you be blessed by these love songs. We're in the studio now getting these love songs together. We're gonna release an EP real soon, shortly, so that you can, hear some real love songs, not a song that's filled with lust and foolishness, but love songs that express love and teach us how to love. Okay, so the last thing under the principle of hope is you got to write down 7 ways that you want to express your love for 21 days. Okay. Now, the third thing, we got through the principle of love and the very practical steps and things to do. We talked about hope and those things. And now the third thing is faith. As you could probably figure out, it's faith, hope, and love. Remember, we're looking at this thing from the inside out, from the greatest to the least, which is love, hope, faith. Then now faith. Now, the aspect of faith is that I want to give you is the way, the spirit of faith, or the actions of faith starts with your mouth. It says we having the same spirit of faith in 2 Corinthians, the 4th chapter. We having the same spirit of faith. Speak the things we believe, right? So faith is about speaking things that you believe. We recently went through a revelation period where the Lord showed us that, the things which should be will be. And he connected Romans 4:17 to that, which talks about God who quickened the dead and called those things which be not as though they were, how Abraham became the father of many nations. He went from being the exalted father to the father of many nations because of what he said and what he heard. Your marriage will come from being a mess to magnificent because of what you say and what you hear. Because of what you say to your spouse and what your spouse hear you say to them. Hear what I'm saying? Because of what you say to your spouse and what your spouse hear you say will cause your marriage to go from being a mess to magnificent. Man, this is good. Man, I'm telling you what we know. I'm telling you what we've lived. Okay. Calling those things that are not causes those things to become. Right. So the word that which should be will be in your marriage. Think about the things that should be happening in your marriage and begin to say those things will happen in your marriage. That's the first thing when I come to the practical thing to do on the thing. So if you're not making love, or I don't even like saying like that. If your sexual relationship is not where you want it to be, then say where you want it to be. Say if it's not happening as often as you would like for it to happen, if the quality of it is not the quality that you want, then you got to say, you know what, if this will happen, as often as you want it to happen, or the quality will be what we want it to be, and so that's what you have to do to take your marriage from a mess to being magnificent. Sit down with each other, sit down with your spouse, say, what do you want from our sexual relationship? Well, I want you to be pleased. Okay. Now you got something to confess. Now you got something to say, you know what? You will be pleased every time we have a sexual encounter. And you say that, and you declare that I will please my spouse every time we have my aim will be to please my spouse every time we have a sexual encounter. And you say that, my aim will be make my wife feel my love every time we get together. You say that you got to begin to call those things which aren't happening in your marriage the way you want them to happen. You got to begin to say it. Okay. Then after you understand this and you begin to operate in this, then I want you to begin to declare the 7 expressions of love that you wrote down in the previous principle. Declare, I will kiss my wife every time I walk out of the door. I will hug my husband. The first thing I'll do when I get up in the morning is hug my husband and tell him that I love him. Whatever it is that you feel like you need to do, then that's what you do. The third facet under the faith principle is be intentional and consistent. I can't say enough about this thought of being intentional, because a lot of us want stuff to just happen. They want your marriage to go from being a mess to magnificent, and they want it to just happen without them putting in any effort, without them putting in any work. They just want it to happen. Well, you know what? You had to put in work for it to get into a mess. So you're going to put in some work for it to become magnificent. And what I'm telling you is an easy yoke. This is easy stuff. Most of it is verbal activity. This easy stuff. But man, the outcome is magnificent. your marriage will go from being a mess to magnificent, because you're going to put these principles into place that I've just shared with you. Love is a fruit, and it can grow as long as you stay connected to the source and you express it. Confess what you pray. Read 1 Corinthians chapter 13 together and tell each other you love each other. Hope. You got to see what you want your marriage to be. Don't look at what it is right now. Don't look at what it is. Stop saying what it is. Start saying what it will be. Describe to each other what you want to see your marriage to be. And then write down 7 ways you're going to express it so that it can become it. And then faith. That you got to understand that the things that should be will be in your marriage. But you got to say it. You got to speak it. You got to call it into existence. Then you got to declare it. And you got to be intentional about doing the things that you said you would do. Being consistent is what causes things to change. Consistency changes the things that are inconsistent in your marriage. Your consistency will change the things that are inconsistent within your marriage. 21 days is my challenge to you. 21 days. You can do it. We're praying that it'll happen in your life. Man, I gotta go. Oh, I gotta go. Oh, I wish. Oh, sister Lovely would have made this such a more powerful podcast, but unfortunately, she couldn't be here. But she will be back with us next week. I wanna thank you for tuning in. I wanna encourage you. Stay connected with us. Join our Gospelove page. Join our Gospelove group. Like our Gospelove page on Facebook. Join our Gospelove group on Facebook. Just type in Gospelove in the search engine and it'll come up. Join our group, because I'm always putting content up there that'll be a blessing to you. That's gonna help you go from being a mess, your marriage from being a mess to being magnificent. Follow me on Twitter at our Gospelove Twitter handle. Follow us on Instagram at our Gospelove. Everything is Gospelove. Gospelove, and this again, that's Gospelove is only one L. Just follow us, or you can follow me. Excuse me. Go to our Facebook page and type in my name, Damaris Johnson. Go to our Gospelove webpage. It's gospelove.com. Everything is Gospelove, because this is a movement. This is a ministry that's going to move and has moved throughout a lot of people's lives. And so we just want to be a blessing to you. We want to believe you that your marriage will be what it was designed to be. And that's nothing short of magnificent. Thank you. God bless you. And we will see you next week right here from Gospelove.